Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Friday the 15th of October. Wow, that happened fast. This morning, Friday's my day off. It doesn't often happen that I get it, but so I slept in a little bit. So as I'm recording this, the sun is sort of streaming in at an awkward angle, so I hope you can see me. Today, I'd like to talk about something that I saw on the news last night, and it's been bothering me for a while. And as a Christian, I'm struggling with how do I deal with this, or how do I think about this? It's not mine to deal with. I watched last night as Admiral Mark McDonald was interviewed on CTV News, and he has been exonerated of the whatever charges had been laid against him. I think there were alleged charges of some form of sexual assault or something, and he has been exonerated. And now there is, it seems that he stepped aside from his role as the newly appointed Chief of Defense Staff, the CDS, back in January. And he was appointed in January, and six weeks later, I believe, these allegations of inappropriate behavior were brought forward, and he voluntarily stepped aside, stepped down from his role as CDS, so that the investigation could go forward, and the truth could be discovered. And all of this time later, so we're talking about February or March, and all of this time later, in mid-October, he has been exonerated. He has been on leave without pay. Okay, understood. A mark against him was leveled. Someone accused him of something. And I don't know about the Canadian system. I watch way too much American television. But it does seem fair to me that you are innocent until proven guilty. So he has been on leave with pay until such time as this is all wrapped up. Well, it's being wrapped up. He has been exonerated. And he expects that he should be able to step back into his role as the CDS, as the Canadian Defense Staff. And I don't see a problem with that. He voluntarily stepped aside so that truth could be discovered. Truth has been discovered. He has been exonerated. And now he should be able to walk back into the position that he held when he stepped aside. He should not be held responsible for something that it has not been proven that he did. We can live in a world in which we say, well, it wasn't proven, but he probably did it. But the fact is, how would we feel if that was someone accusing us of something? Even if we were exonerated, even if we proved our innocence, that others stood there and said, well, the mark was made against you, so you're besmirched for life. We're never going to trust you. We're never going to allow you to resume your life, all because you were the unfortunate person who some other person decided to try to take down. That doesn't seem like a good, faithful Canadian or Christian way to live your life. Now, this is not, I don't know about Mark McDonald or his accuser or anybody's Christianity or their religious base. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking more about how do I feel as a Christian. I know that my concern with all of this is that the response seemed to be from the military and the government, especially from one person who was not in the government or the military. She was speaking from her perspective from a different group. I can't remember what it was. But she said, the problem with this is if he is reinstated as the CDS, then what does that say to women in the culture for women in the Canadian Armed Forces? That they can't come forward. Well, to me, those two things are not equal. Yes, the Canadian Armed Forces has a long way to go, but they are working toward creating a culture in which men or women, like I know more often than not happens to women, but men are also sexually assaulted. They're working toward changing a culture so that people can come forward and feel freely that they can share their concerns, that they can make a complaint, and that it will be followed through properly. And that also then they need to balance that with the person who is being complained about also has rights. And if the complaint is found to be unfounded, then the person who was accused needs to be able to get their life back. Think about their poor family. If it was a case of mistaken identity or worst case scenario, someone just snubbed, someone who wanted to get back or get revenge for whatever, they could ruin the person's life. And that's my concern, is that if we're asking society to say, let's believe the women. Absolutely. If someone comes forward and says that they have been victimized, we need to believe them. And we need to take on due process so that we can discover what has happened. But if we discover that they were mistaken in the identity of the person who hurt them, or worst case scenario, they have created this scenario that it never did happen, then we also need to take care of the person who was being accused, falsely accused. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because someone has been charged with something doesn't mean that they should be condemned to spend the rest of their life being, well, he wasn't found guilty, but that didn't make him innocent. I have had a couple of experiences where I have felt myself in the middle of a pinch like this, where things have been difficult. The first, well, a few actually. The first of them was when I was a young clergy person. I was at a clergy conference, and there had been some free time, and some of the older clergy, lots of the clergy, had had a few beers or something like that, during the time before dinner. And as we were gathered for dinner, there was a bunch of us in line waiting for the buffet, and one priest, older priest, placed his hand on my rear end and squeezed. That had never happened to me before. This was a priest I respected, and I thought I was uncomfortable. I felt violated, and I felt also that I needed to just step away and not make a big deal of it, because this was, I believe, to be just a mistake made by someone who was inebriated. Looking back, I think I should have made a bigger deal of it, not necessarily, charging and things like that, but I should have sat down and spoken to him when he was sober. I did have a clergy friend who stood up for me, who was standing with me when this happened and saw this happen. I didn't realize anybody had seen, but he sort of tore a strip off the person who did it. And I felt like that someone was watching out for me, and I appreciated that this friend would stand up for me. I really did. But it took me a long time to be able to feel comfortable with the person who touched me unwantedly. Could I have done something different? Sure. This was 20 years ago. The world has changed considerably since then. If it happened today, or if I was, a 29-year-old or 30-year-old priest, and it happened to me today, absolutely I would do things differently. But that is in the past. And bringing it up now, 20 years later, as are some of these things that are coming out in the Canadian Forces, what good would it do? This gentleman is older, he's retired if he's even still alive, and it wouldn't change anything. Another situation that I was involved in was I was involved with a student. I had a student, and the student struggled with taking leadership or direction from a female priest, and this student repeatedly did not complete assignments and was not respectful of the congregation either, and did a fair bit of work to sort of sow seeds of dissension within my parish. And when all was said and done, I had to fail the student because the student did not meet the standard. It wasn't an extremely high standard, but they did not meet the standard set that for me would say this person is called to be a parish priest, and at this moment, and all of the things, the tools that were given me to mark this student, to grade this student, did not add up to a passing grade, and it was a pass-fail course. Upon telling this person that they had not passed the course, this person brought someone in with authority, and they threatened to sue me because of, pick your poison. They had a list of things that I had apparently done wrong. That never happened, but I lived for several months under the fear of being sued because I did my job. I took seriously the role I had as a supervisor in preparing someone or recognizing that maybe someone wasn't called to be a priest, and I took it on the chin. Now, I did take on students after that. I didn't allow that to paralyze me, but it completely changed the way I thought about being a supervisor. It shifted the way I thought about being a priest, and I'm still at times dealing with the stress of what happened because of that. Another situation that I am aware of was an instance where a person had applied for employment, and the references were checked and everything looked good, and employment was tentatively offered. And after that was done and an announcement was made that this person would be hired, a person came to me with information from the internet that had taken a great deal of work to find. This wasn't a quick Google search. This was a deep dive. And they found information that this person that we were preparing to hire had accusations with the police and had been taken to trial and had been found not guilty. When this was brought to the attention of the powers that be, that made the decision as to whether or not we would continue forward with the offer of employment, it was deemed important that we not hire this person because, essentially, I think the thought was, where there's smoke, there's fire. A couple of accusations had been made by what even the judge in the case had said were, not appropriate, like they weren't reliable accusations. This person was found not guilty, and then had to go on and live their life knowing that they had been publicly tried, found not guilty by the courts, but judged guilty by the community. And now, a couple of decades later, was finding that this was happening all over again because somebody made the decision to dig deep and find dirt on this person, and others were not able to see beyond the dirt and recognize the truth of the reality of the situation. We are living in a very litigious society. We are living in a world that says, if you don't like something, sue. Take them to court. And now we have come to a place where we have people who are getting on bandwagons to call out Me Too. And I am not in any way, shape, or form suggesting that if a woman or a man has been assaulted, abused, hurt, an illegal thing has been done to them, I'm not saying that they should not speak up. Absolutely, they should speak up. And we should be willing to listen and work with them to discover the truth and then follow through and find justice for them. But my concern is that there are a lot of people crying wolf. There are a lot of people, it seems, that are taking advantage of this movement to say, I have the right to do this. I'm going to accuse this person. And innocent people are being hurt. Innocent people's lives are being changed, altered, and their families' lives are being really messed up forever. As they say, once it's on the internet, it never goes away. That's true. How many people are going to be hurt because somebody comes forward and makes an allegation that is not true for their own reasons? And I really do take umbrage with the woman yesterday on the news who said that regardless of whether Admiral McDonald has been exonerated, he should not get his position of authority back within the Canadian Armed Forces, because what would that say to the women? What would that say about the culture for women to report? Well, what does it say for the culture of men or other women in authority who are working they're doing a good job and they're trying hard to be good leaders and to do what they're called to do, if at every moment in every decision they have to second guess what they do in case someone else later decides they don't like them and want to accuse them? Yes, things have changed a great deal. The way we behave, the way we treat one another has changed. Should we necessarily be going back and applying today's standards on things that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago? A question for another day. But when someone is thoroughly investigated and found their charges are dropped and they are exonerated, I do not believe that we, as a society, have the right to continue a witch hunt against them. Admiral McDonald stepped aside and allowed people to do a deep dive into his life. And now he is simply asking that he would get on with his life. What is wrong with that? Yes, we need to change the culture for women in the Canadian Armed Forces and anywhere, and for men, especially I think for men, so that those who have legitimately been assaulted or wrong done to them have the ability to, without fear of reprisal, step forward and say, this is what happened to me. But we also need to establish the fact that there will be responses to those who, and there will be appropriate action for those who make false claims, and for those people who have to go through the process, the humiliating process of being charged unfairly and are then exonerated. We need to create a culture in which they know that they can regain their life. We cannot let the pendulum swing so far to the rights of those who feel that they have a right to call someone out, which they do. But we cannot simply say then that every accusation must automatically be true simply because they said it, because we know that that is not always the truth. Some people do make accusations simply to hurt others. And that's a truth that we need to bear in mind. Our government needs to bear in mind, and the Canadian Armed Forces and every workplace needs to bear in mind as we move forward into a world where everyone treats others with respect and appropriately, and if something happens, where we have a place of fairness and justice, that fairness and justice can prevail. So those are my thoughts, my frustrations this day. Those are where my prayers are with all those who are accused and those who are accusing, that justice may be done, and in the end, truth will win out, and people's lives will not be needlessly ruined. Have a good day. God bless you. Have a great weekend. I will see you Monday for Church at Home with Rachael, or Sunday afternoon for our mini church for the parish of St. Thomas Wainwright and St. Mary's Edgerton, the wee parish. God bless. Have a wonderful weekend.